The papers were signed at 10:47 on a Thursday morning. Daniel Cole set the pen down on the table, and the clerk collected the documents, and that was it. 9 years of a marriage reduced to a procedural moment in a room that smelled like recycled air and old carpet. His ex-wife, Vanessa, had already walked out before the clerk finished gathering the pages. She didn't look back. Daniel sat for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he stood, gathered his jacket, and walked out into the hallway. He was almost at the elevator when he felt a hand on his arm. He turned. It was Sarah Whitfield, 29 years old, Vanessa's best friend since college. Someone Daniel had known for 8 years as a warm and slightly peripheral presence in the marriage, present at dinners, present at holidays. Someone whose opinion Vanessa valued and whose name appeared in conversations the way good friends' names do, constantly and naturally. She looked at him, and she said 4 words. 4 words that he immediately categorized as a joke, the kind of thing someone says at an uncomfortable moment to lighten it. He smiled. He said something forgettable. He got in the elevator. He would not understand those 4 words for several more weeks. And when he did, when the full meaning of what Sarah had been carrying for years finally came clear, it was going to change the story he thought he already knew about the people closest to him. Please like this video. Those likes mean so much for stories like this. Subscribe too, free. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Now let me take you back. Daniel Cole was 36 years old and had spent 9 years being the kind of husband that people in his life called devoted, which he came to understand was another word for taken for granted. He worked in insurance risk assessment, not glamorous, but honest work that required precision and patience and the ability to sit with complexity without panicking. He had those qualities in professional abundance. He had brought them to his marriage the same way, steady, present, committed to the long view. He had loved Vanessa completely, not blindly. He had seen her clearly, her ambition, her restlessness, her specific hunger for something that kept relocating itself just beyond whatever she currently had. He had seen these things and loved her anyway, the way people love when they have decided that someone's complications are part of the whole rather than problems to be solved. The marriage had not ended in a single dramatic event. It had ended the way things end when one person has been growing in a different direction for years and has simply reached the point where the distance can no longer be managed. Vanessa had filed. Daniel had not contested it. He had signed the papers on a Thursday morning, driven home to his apartment. He had moved out 3 months earlier and spent the afternoon sitting in a chair doing approximately nothing. He was good at doing nothing when he needed to process something. He had learned this about himself. Vanessa Cole was 35 and had the particular quality of someone who was always the most interesting person in any room she decided to be interesting in. She was professionally accomplished, a marketing director whose instinct for what people wanted to hear had served her well in a career and less well in a marriage. She had the charm that opens doors and the restlessness that won't let her stay in any room long enough to fully inhabit it. She had not left Daniel for someone specific. She had left him for a version of herself that didn't include the life they had. That version of herself turned out to be somewhat lonelier than anticipated. She would understand this gradually. In the months after the courthouse, Sarah Whitfield had been Vanessa's best friend since their first week of college, which meant she had known Vanessa for 11 years and had known Daniel for 8 of them. She was a high school art teacher, patient with people who couldn't yet see their own capability, generous with her attention, the kind of person who remembered what you told her 3 months ago and asked about it without being prompted. She had been a peripheral presence in Daniel and Vanessa's marriage, present enough to witness, distant enough to maintain perspective. What she had witnessed over 8 years had produced in her something she had been working to put exactly where it belonged. In the part of herself that stays still when the right thing to do is stay still. She had stayed still for 8 years. The marriage was over now. She had said 4 words in a hallway, and she was going to show up because staying still had always been a choice she made while someone else needed something, and now she was making a different choice. She started small. A coffee on a Saturday morning. She texted asking if he wanted company, framed as the kind of thing friends do, which was also what it was, exactly and sincerely. He said yes because he had nowhere to be, and the apartment was very quiet. She arrived with 2 coffees and without any agenda that she announced. They sat for 2 hours. She asked about his work. She asked about his apartment, what he needed for it, whether he had what he needed, the practical questions of someone taking inventory of a situation. She did not bring up Vanessa. She did not perform consolation. She was just there. He noticed this. In the weeks that followed, she kept showing up in small, specific ways. Not every day. Not in a way that imposed. She texted when she thought of something relevant, a book he had mentioned once that she found, a restaurant she passed that she thought he'd like, the kind of peripheral attention that communicates to a person that someone is thinking of them in the ordinary moments, not just the significant ones. He started looking forward to the texts. He noticed that too. He ran into her unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon outside a grocery store. She had paint on her left hand from a project at school, and she was carrying an amount of vegetables that suggested she was cooking for more than one person, which made him curious in a way he immediately set aside. They stood on the sidewalk for 45 minutes, just talking about the quality of light in October, about a documentary he had watched, about the particular kind of loneliness that isn't about being alone, but about the specific absence of one person's specific presence. He had not meant to say that last part. She had received it without making it uncomfortable. He walked home thinking about how rare it was to be in a conversation with someone who didn't require anything from you except your honesty. The dinner happened in week 5. He had cooked, not elaborately, but with genuine effort, which she noticed and said so without excessive praise. They were at the table when he said, "The thing you said at the courthouse." She looked at him. He said, "I've been thinking about what you meant." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said it was something they could talk about, but maybe not tonight. He accepted that. He noticed he wanted to know. He noticed he wasn't just curious, he was impatient. And impatience, after the quiet months that had followed the divorce, felt like something arriving rather than something leaving. Please like this video. Those likes genuinely keep stories like this going. Hit the button. Subscribe if you haven't, it's free. Drop a comment, where in the world are you watching from? Now, the night she told him everything. 6 weeks after the courthouse, Sarah told him the truth. Not with fanfare, not with a prepared speech. They were sitting on his couch, after a dinner that had gone long because neither of them had wanted to end it, and the city outside was doing what cities do at 10 o'clock on a Friday. Noise and light and the ordinary ongoing life of people who have somewhere to be. She told him that the 4 words in the courthouse hallway had been true. She told him that she had not been in love with him since the divorce, not since the separation, not since the marriage started visibly struggling. She had fallen in love with him over years, gradually, without deciding to, in the specific accumulated way of someone who watches a person be consistently, entirely themselves and cannot help understanding that what they are seeing is something worth staying near. She had watched him love Vanessa. She had watched him love her with a completeness that she had never seen before, not possessively, not contingently, but with the open, committed, daily quality of someone who had decided that this person was worth all of it and had just kept deciding. She had stayed quiet because Vanessa was her best friend of 11 years. She had stayed quiet because the alternative was a betrayal she was not capable of. She had stayed quiet for years, and she was not entirely sure it had been the right choice, but it had been the only one she knew how to make. Daniel sat with all of it for a long time. He thought about 8 years of dinners and holidays and the ordinary social occasions of a marriage. He thought about how many times Sarah had been in the room. He thought about what it cost to sit in a room with someone you love while they love someone else, and to do that not once but for years, and to never let it show because the showing would cost too much. He thought about the coffees and the texts and the paint on her hand outside the grocery store. He understood suddenly and completely that the care she had been showing him in the past 6 weeks was not new. It was just finally allowed to be visible. He did not respond that night with anything definitive. He told her he needed time, not because he was uncertain of what he felt, but because he was a careful man who understood that feelings and decisions were 2 different things, and that the second one deserved to be made deliberately. She said she understood. She said she wasn't going anywhere. She went home. He sat in the apartment for a long time after she left. He thought about a specific moment, a dinner party 3 years ago, when Vanessa had said something dismissive about something he was proud of, and everyone at the table had moved past it. And Sarah, sitting across from him, had met his eyes for exactly 1 second. Not in a way that anyone else would have noticed, just in a way that said, "I saw that. That mattered." He had filed the moment away at the time without examining it. He was examining it now. 3 weeks after the confession, Vanessa called. Not to reconcile, she was too clear-eyed for that. She called because she had heard, through the specific efficient network of mutual connections, that Daniel and Sarah had been spending time together. She called because she wanted to understand something. The conversation was not long. She said she found it strange and complicated. Daniel listened. He told her it was something real. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that Daniel had not expected. She said that Sarah was the most loyal person she had ever known. She said that Sarah had been loyal to her across 11 years of friendship in ways that Vanessa had accepted without always acknowledging. She said that she had always known in some peripheral way she had chosen not to examine, that Sarah saw Daniel more clearly than she did. And she said, and Daniel would think about this for a long time afterward, that she didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. She landed on grateful. She said, take care of her. She ended the call. Daniel sat with the phone for a while. He thought about what it must have cost Vanessa to say that. He thought about what it must have cost Sarah not to say anything. For years, he made a decision. He called Sarah the next morning. He drove to her apartment with coffee, too, the way she took hers, which he had been paying attention to, and stood at her door. She opened it. She looked at him. He said, I've been thinking about something you told me. She waited. He said, 3 years ago at a dinner party, I said something I was proud of, and Vanessa dismissed it. You looked at me across the table. 1 second. Sarah said, I remember. He said, I remember it too. I just didn't know why. She said nothing. He said, I do now. He held out her coffee. She took it. He came inside. What followed was not a dramatic reconfiguration of either of their lives. It was slower than that and more honest. Two people who had been circling each other for years, finding, in the direct daylight of actual choice, that what was there was exactly what it appeared to be. They took time. They were careful. They understood that the history between them, Daniel's marriage, Sarah's friendship with Vanessa, the years of proximity and silence, required care rather than speed. They gave it care. And what emerged from that care was something that had the specific quality of things built on real foundations, not exciting in the way of things that arrive suddenly, but solid in the way of things that intend to last. Vanessa eventually called Sarah. That conversation was long and private and costly and necessary. They were not the same friends after it. But they found a version of friendship that could hold the truth of what had happened. Not easily, not without ongoing work, but authentically. The proposal was quiet. He asked her on a Sunday morning in her kitchen over breakfast, in the middle of an ordinary conversation about nothing significant, no elaborate staging, no hidden rings. Just the question, offered directly, by a man who had learned that the most important things he had said in his life had been said simply. She said yes the same way, directly. Without ceremony, the way she did everything. The wedding was small. The people who attended were the people who knew the real story, not the version that looked one way from the outside, but the actual version with its years of silence and its quiet choices and its slow, careful arrival at the right moment. Vanessa was not at the wedding. That was the right decision for everyone. Arrived it gently and without bitterness. She sent a card. Sarah read it once and put it in a drawer. Daniel did not read it. Some things were private. On the evening of the wedding, Daniel stood outside for a moment before the reception, the specific small pause of someone trying to hold the full weight of a moment before it becomes memory. He thought about the courthouse hallway. He thought about 4 words whispered by a woman he had known for 8 years and not yet fully seen. He thought about what it took to love someone quietly, from the right distance, for years, without asking for anything, without betraying anyone, without losing the quiet certainty that the right moment would come. He thought about what that kind of love required. And he thought, I want to be worthy of it. He went back inside. Sarah was laughing at something someone had said. The laugh reached him from across the room. He went toward it. Here's the question I want you to think about. If you were Daniel, and you found out Sarah had felt this way for 8 years, would that feel like a gift? Or would it complicate everything? Drop your answer in the comments. I want the real one. And please tell me where you're watching from. Please like this video. Those likes are what lets this channel keep telling these stories. Hit the button. Subscribe if you haven't. Free, always. Share this with someone today. See you in the next one.